I created my unit plan based on integration into three content areas of the works of Shakespeare. Specifically, I wanted to take a look at Romeo and Juliet. And the way I broke this into three core lessons. The first one was on history and culture, with the art focus being drama, in which they'd create a scene. The second lesson was in the core subject of literature, uh, which the art focus that I was going with was music, matching music with emotion. And the third lesson, core subject, was physical education, or gym, and the art focus was dance, in the idea of incorporating sword fighting. So let's take a little bit of a look, and first we'll start in lesson number one. Lesson number one was integrating history and drama. And the standards that this was incorporating was from Kansas, was the history standards from Kansas. One of them is that choices have consequences. Standard four is that societies experience continuity and change over time. So both continuity and change happen as society grows. And then number five was that the relationships between people, place, and idea and environments are dynamic. So they're always changing and constantly. So how do we apply those standards to implementing history and drama? So the first way is you have the students, they read a scene from the play or a group of scenes. And then what they do is they identify what the conflict is in the scene, what those elements of conflict are. And then they will create a new scene. They'll use partners and they will mirror the same conflict, except set in a modern era, to kind of show that what happened then can still happen now or is happening now. So a great example of this in Act 1, Scene 1 is the really famous scene from Romeo and Juliet where the two households, they meet in the street, one bites their thumb at the other, they insult each other, which starts off kind of lighthearted and ends up in this huge fight over something that we're not even sure exactly what it is, but they're fighting over something. So students could do this and they could talk about, why are they fighting? What is the subtext here? What is this pointing to? And what would relate to this today? So one example could be a new scene talking about the current Palestine-Israeli conflict, or it could be something talking about perhaps what happened in Ferguson, Missouri, with police officers versus the African American community. So it could be anything that's a close knit idea, one versus the other. That's just an example of how that could incorporate. So why is this? Well, so Morgan Apple, I'm going to be using her a lot because she had some amazing statistics on what happens here. And she says that in an article, Arts Integration Across Curriculum from the Leadership Journal in 2006, that students participating in drama showed enhanced story comprehension, better understanding of characters and motivations, improved peer interactions, and collaboration. In addition, they had enhanced writing proficiency and prolixity, so larger vocabularies, better understanding of conflict, resolution, relationship, and empathy. They have enhanced problem-solving abilities and better understanding of complex relationships. That's really important with history because that's really what history deals with, especially with the standards written the way they are for the state of Kansas, that we want to be able to show that by understanding what happened in the past, that we're able to solve problems for the present and the future. The journal About Campus, Christopher Garrett wrote an article called "Infusing Art Across the Curriculum," which talks about the Arts Integration Initiative at Oklahoma City University. And in there, he describes a learning program that focused on improving teaching and learning throughout the entire integration of arts in a variety of disciplines. And they actually did a study in a world history class where they found that rather than focus on the memorization of dates and everything like that, students were encouraged to practice higher learning skills, which gave students opportunities to analyze, synthesize, evaluate, those higher level skills that we always are trying to encourage the students to do. So by integrating drama into a history lesson, we're creating higher level thinking about what they're learning in that history lesson. Lesson number two is involving literature and music. So I didn't go with the obvious of literature and drama because that I think that'd be too easy. But literature and music, and the standards that this are addressing are two standards for English in English language arts in Kansas. One of them is to analyze a particular point of view or cultural experience reflected in the work of literature from outside the United States. That would be Shakespeare, drawing on the wide reading of world literature. And two, analyze the representation of a subject or key scene in two different artistic mediums, including what is emphasized about or absent in each treatment. So for this, what I would do is after reading a scene or group of scenes, I would instruct the students to find music that would add to the emotional value of that scene. In other words, they would try to find music that would fit either to it could be a counterpoint to the emotion, which would be interesting, or it could be an enhancement, or it could be to create the mood. Anything they could justify and rationalize within the context of the assignment would be great. So, for example, Act 3, Scene 3 of Romeo and Juliet. This is the big fight scene between Tybalt or Mercutio, and then between Romeo and Tybalt. This would be a great song to use here. This is the song Turning Violent by the Flaming Lips. Turning violent is kind of what happens to Romeo, or also what happens in the scene. It starts off playful and turns violent. So not only does the text of the song go out, but the way it plays. So I'm going to play a little bit of that here so you can kind of hear how it changes from this melodic kind of underscoring to this kind of violent sound. So why are we integrating music with literature? Again, Morgan Appel. She said that students engaged in a music-infused curriculum exhibit improved cognitive development, enhanced spatial and temporal reasoning, so dealing with proximity, with proxemics, and with chronemics, with time. They have improved mathematical reasoning, increased positive concept of self, so self-confidence is boosted. They also have an improved literacy and higher performances on SATs. Clearly there is a benefit to this. She also notes, with music in particular, that non-native English speakers also see a measured increase in literacy and fluency when music is combined with an English as a second language program. So overall, it really has a big effect on what students are able to understand and comprehend. Victor Hugo, the author, also wrote an essay on Shakespeare, and he actually says in there, talking about the music, he says that music expresses that which cannot be said and on which it is impossible to be silent. And I think that's true because something about music really enhances how we feel. It has an ability to make us look back and really feel something. I had an article that I read in a psychology magazine that talked about how music actually creates neural pathways that we're able to quickly bring back. That's why music is so good and used so often to enhance emotional quality in anything from commercials and movies to even just on the radio. You hear a song that you knew from your childhood or from or earlier, and it elicits an emotional response. That's why that's so important. For the third lesson, I was going to incorporate dance into gym, into physical education. And for this, I'd be using the standards, the Kansas PE standard, that the students demonstrates competency in motor skills and movement patterns needed to perform a variety of physical activities. And then the Kansas dance standard, which is understanding dance as a way to create and communicate meaning. In addition to clearly the activity, it's a physical activity, so it's good exercise as well. So what we would do for this is, after reading that same scene that we talked about before, Act 3, Scene 1, we would watch a video of a fight from the play. Here's a sample of a video, but you can kind of get an idea of what they'd be looking at. So we would discuss, after we watched the video, we would discuss how the fight communicates the action and the story and the emotion of the scene. So fighting for fighting's sake is not, in theater terms, is not a good thing either. So it has to tell a story. It has to further the action. It has to create some sort of tangible emotion that comes up with us. And then we discuss how that fighting on stage is really not fighting. It's a dance. It's choreographed and rehearsed like a dance. There's footwork. There's movements that have to be done. It's a very physical activity. And then we would give the students the opportunity to learn how to do that, but instead of swords, using pool noodles for safety, for obvious reasons. Morgan Appel, she describes why dance is so important in integration of arts in education. She says that research indicates that participating in dance positively impacts self-confidence and social tolerance. Social tolerance is a big deal these days, and there's a lot of states that are incorporating social tolerance ideas into curricula. She says, along with the connections to history, civics, and social studies, that's be through storytelling of movement, which is what narrative dance and stage combat try to do. But it also creates abilities for organization, creativity, and nonverbal reasoning. It increases the development of individual and collaborative work skills. In dance, you have to work together. You have a partner, and in stage combat, it's no difference. Is you don't really have an opponent, you have a partner. Your goal is to make each other look good, so you have to work together. And with standards moving towards college and career readiness, this is an important aspect as well. She said it also boosts creative expression and learning persistence. Persistence, I think, is another key attribute that we have to think about because we want the students to be able to want to learn and to want to keep going. So Judith Williamson, in an article for The Guardian in 2004 called An Active Embodiment, wrote that dance doesn't just represent love, acceptance, forgiveness. It doesn't just represent emotions. It embodies them in a way we can understand without any words at all. We do not need to translate dance. It speaks in our very own first and most intimate way. And I think that is absolutely true. That's why you can watch a dance that is performed from people who don't even speak English, or the dancers are from different backgrounds, and you still get what is happening. Dr. Marion Langsner, in an article called Reasons Why Everyone Should Study Stage Combat, says that few disciplines within theater enjoy the clarity of dramatic conflict and narrative transparency as stage combat does. That it is really a dance with swords. And that's cool because narrative transparency is what we're going for. That is what is so important with any type of activity with literature. Is that you want to have that. You want the students to be able to understand the narrative. What is happening? Why is it happening? What does this mean for me? And how to incorporate that into their daily actions to be able to understand it. So I hope that kind of gave an overview of what I would do to integrate arts into 3 different core content areas with a Shakespeare lesson with Romeo and Juliet. I had an interesting time doing this. It was fun to put it together, a little challenging, but it sure was interesting to be able to turn this on myself and see how I would do that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening.